Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Um,
That's okay.
Thank you so much for joining in this session with me. It means a lot. And I would like to start the entire thing by actually extending my gratitude to you, Richard, for giving me this warm opportunity to speak today. Well, today I am briefly going to discuss about the India-China relationship. As the recent news flash highlights, the painful death of 20 Indian soldiers due to the rising border conflicts out there in Galban Valley, the matter becomes almost more impossible to overlook, especially when the social media rants is all about boycotting Chinese goods to an extent of identifying the application, the Chinese origin application, and uninstalling them. Mm. Surprisingly, this year, the year 2020, has been marked as the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic ties between the two nations, India and China. And we had plans to celebrate upon this occasions this year via various of cultural programs in 2020. Clearly, that didn't happen. I feel like we should all be very much informed about the political as well as economical relationship these nations have shared so far. It will only make us more able to gauge the situation, and then we can carry on extending our responsibility as citizens. Uh, to begin with, I would like to tour you a brief through the history of the relations that both this country has shared. If we look into the 16th century and prior to that moment, we see the mentions of a Silk Route in our history texts and other books. We know how Buddhism, Gautam Buddha was born in India, and how over 80% of the Chinese population is Buddhist, which gives a fair idea about how the cultural exchanges and the trade exchanges as well had taken place back in 16 and started from back in 16th century and still continues in a lot of aspects so far. The first ever clash recorded in the history is known as Sino-Sikh clash, which was dated back to 18th, 19th century, and is a result of the Sikh Empire start trying to expand onto their territory, was held back by the Chinese army, but both the sides eventually forgot about it since uh, the colonial rule started coming up to the picture. The initial ties of diplomacy first started in 1950s when we find our constitution and our then prime minister Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru was a seeker of peace and also a believer that a nice tie up with one of the blooming economy in our surrounding would be a great beneficial to both the nations. So Mr. Nehru and the then premier Zhou Enlai signs in with this treaty known as Panchashil, that literally known as the five principles of peaceful coexistence. However, peaceful coexistence couldn't lie for a long time since 1954 onwards, both the nation starts defining their boundaries and gets into a huge conflict. In 1954, at first, India tries to publish its map, which was highly revolted by the Chinese. And again in 1958, China publishes a map showing the Akshay Chin Plateau to be their own border territory, which was again protested by India. Now, in between, there are few lines to which has historical determination and should be considered by us. I would throw a bit of light in the next slide about it. Soon afterwards, in 1959, the 14th Dalai Lama from Tibet to India and seek sanctuary in Dharamshala, along with other Tibetan rebels. And China highly accuses India for uh, enabling the revolt movements, which was intolerant for China. Now, look into the first picture of this slide. The blue line which right now is could also be seen as in the political map of India as our political boundary, has a name called Johnson's Line. And India considers Johnson's Line of 1865 as the boundary, which put Akshay Chin in Kashmir, since the boundary was drawn by a British back in 18th century and for some reason was not presented to China, and hence China does not consider this as the boundary. Now, the second one is the McCartney Line, which has its existence back in 1899 and was proposed by China to the British Army. This line is in the first picture, the dotted line. You can see in this line was highly accepted by the British due to the convenience that the terrain makes possible for. But again, this line is not considered as India to be a valid line. If you look into the second picture, the topmost or the northmost boundary dotted by red line is known as the McMahon's line, and this line again is considered to be India's political boundary. Again, this line holds no existence for the Chinese, and they have always considered Arunachal Pradesh to be their own South China. Hence, Arunachal Pradesh again becomes the disputed region for the. So 1962 sees the starting of the Sino-Indian War, where India was allegedly defeated by China, and China then claims the Akshay Chin and Arunachal Pradesh to be their own. But it was just the claims, but India never gave in to the claim and never uh, rebuilded its political map so far. 1967 sees similar border conflicts, which is known as the Nathula and Chola incident. Both the times, a lot of army from the both hands were reportedly found dead and injured in at the moment. Now, around in 71, what happened is the Chinese relationship with Soviet Union starts deteriorating, and at the same time, in August 71, India signs a peace treaty with Soviet Union, and China then befriends Pakistan, and it said that China sides with Pakistan in its first war with India, which was dated in December 1971. Throughout the 80s, the talk carries on to finally discuss the border issues, but there was no alleged conclusion to the talks that had happened while the rule. Although in 1986, uh, Arunachal Pradesh was granted statehood to India, which was recognized by World Bank and UN, though we would find out in later circumstances that China still uh, remains silent at that time, but does not still consider deep down their heart for the region to be ours, and they still claim Arunachal Pradesh to be a South China. Anyways, immediately after that, the nations they restore to the Panchashil Agreement in 1998 under Rajiv Gandhi's rule, and a group of economic relation, trade, science, and technology treaty were signed between both the countries. Soon afterwards was 1990, where the bilateral trade treaties comes into the picture, and apart from trade, actually, a lot of cross-border environmental concerns were here looked into. And the line of actual control, the term, gains its original significance out there in 93 to 96. If we look into the 2000s, since 1990s, the trade starts flowering between both the countries, and the bilateral trades rapidly develop. If we look into the numbers in the year 2000, both the countries had witnessed a 46% increase in trade volume than the previous year. Since 2009, China signs 102 contracts of labor services with India, where a total turnover expected amounted to be in Feb 2, 2000. China signs another bilateral trade agreement with India to enter into the World Trade Organization MOU. and joint ventures for steel started coming up into the picture. In July 2006, finally, for the first time, the Nathula Pass was opened in Sikkim, and this further facilitated the trade that came into picture. Next. Well, here I'll be giving you some numerics by telling you how the cumulative Chinese investment in India approximates somewhere around 5 billion US dollars in 2009, whereas the Indian investment in China until September 2009 was somewhere below a billion dollars. According to Invest India, 800 Chinese companies are there in the domestic market, and there are a few mentions of the companies that both of them operates in the Chinese and the Indian sectors. By today, Chinese mobile handset companies continue to be covering 50% of India's total mobile handset market. Out here, I would like to draw your attention towards some numerics in the India-China bilateral trade. Have the records from 2014 onwards. And if we look into the total trade structure, we can see from 2014 till 2018, there had been a nice increase in terms of total trade volumes, which 2014 marks to be $70 billion approximate, and 2008 marks it to be $95 billion. If we have to look into the trade imbalance, that is the balance of trade deficit, had always been increasing for India since India was never been able to export more than the import in terms of volume and again in terms of ratio. Although, if we look into the export and import pictures very closely, you can see that the numbers had been lowering down and rebounding back throughout, which gives me a fair picture of the trade being still healthy. If we then look into the last quarter, that is 2018-19, we would see a sharp downfall from $95 billion to again $84 billion in the year 2019. And for the first time, the trade records a negative imbalance, a percentage change in India's import. Right? Out here, I would like to draw your attention towards the import and export pictures of the country, of India especially, and how it looks. Looking into the first pie, over 14% of India's imports in 2019-20 were from China. If you look into the export pie of India, China continues to be the third largest nation after UAE and followed by US for the export picture if to be considered. If we look into the foreign direct investments that China had done to India, the numbers will not show us a sharp pattern of increase or decrease, but the amount would completely helps me to tell the fact that the investments had been quite bounty for China to give to India for carrying forward a healthy trade. Another thing is if we look into China's total export, India becomes only 3% to be China's complete buyer. But if you look into the India's export pie once again, China gives us almost 10% of India's total export. So out here, I'm not highlighting the total trade volumes, but I'm just telling you the percentage changes and how much this 10% could matter to us and how feeble the 3% uh, in China's consideration could get. Next. In May 2007, coming back to the historic talks, India declines Chinese invitation to the Belt and Road Initiative Summit, saying India doesn't find infrastructural development as a threat, But India did not find the entire belt project to be very beneficial for India in terms of economic well-being. And again, there was security concerns to be thought about, according to the expert opinion, which might have deteriorated the relationship from China's behalf. And soon, 3 years back today, we see in 2017, Indian and Chinese army stared at each other in the valley of Doklam. And this conflict was again a result of unclear border definition as well as unilateral claim, like Indian experts like to call it, by China to define their own territory and build roads for. On 15th June, we actually on 15th June we faced the Galavan Valley massacre, where although 20 Indian soldiers were reportedly found dead and 35 Chinese soldiers were reportedly found dead, neither the country wanted the situation to escalate. And while men died, it's important to take into consideration that there were no shots that were fired into. Can we go to the previous slide, please? Thank you. So, what I would actually like to bring you to the conclusion next would be how boycotting of Chinese food would look like a complete withdrawal of trade in terms of China and in terms of India from each other. Now, I'm not saying a trade specifically is an answer to not holding up on war. But I'm saying once both the countries or both parties actually loses any economic interest from each other, declaration of war becomes more easier to think of, or more facilitated to come to a conclusion about. Again, like I said, India actually is dependent on China for 10% of their imports. And if China actually replies back to our boycotting movement, we would actually end up harming the 10 to 12% of our export system. And like I already highlighted, how the foreign direct investment lies upon India, upon a lot of budding industries had been hit by the FDIs by India, we would also end up harming our economy and putting a lot of burden on the growing business in our own country itself. There are chances that we might end up losing on a lot of job opportunities in India as a result of the boycotting movement. Although China would not be affected the way India would actually want to affect China after the war by boycotting a move. What I think would be a more clearer picture to get out of this war kind of situation is the definition of border. And I believe that diplomats could actually take into consideration the UN, the World Bank, and finally form an opinion and for once and for all give us a clear idea of who owns what reason and settle down on this conflict and lay down a border. Maybe then it will not be a very difficult problem for us, and maybe then the armies would stop complaining that, oh, we can see the Chinese army in our region, because the border would be then defined and border conflicts will completely decrease as a result. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for lending your ears. I hope I was informative enough and I didn't bore you guys too. Richard, I hand it over to you.